Yo, what's up? My name is Ken Rogers and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be talking about the New York Knicks season of the 2020 to 2021, this NBA season that has just finished for them because they got knocked out of the playoffs by the Atlanta Hawks. It's very disappointing into the season, but you know, there's a lot of positives to take away from everything that's happened over the course of this season. What I will be doing in this video is I'll be giving you my 5 talking points on the New York Knicks this season and why there is a lot to be excited for going into next season. Talking point number 1, the new management that was brought in. So at the beginning of last year, the New York Knicks had appointed a new president. Scott Perry had managed to bring in Leon Rose, and as part of his job of being the president was to appoint a new head coach, which is a very, very difficult area that the Knicks have been in for the last few years. So it was exciting to see when they appointed Tom Thibodeau, who was a coach with years and years of experience. He was part of that Chicago Bulls team that pretty much ran the league and gave the Miami Heat a run for their money, which also featured current Knicks players Derrick Rose and Taj Gibson. So it was good to see them link up again. He brought in new assistant coaches as well, and Johnny Bryant and Kenny Payne, who had worked with a few of the Knicks players back in their Kentucky days, way back when. And their extended staff as well. This group is a big reason why the Knicks have been so successful in the NBA this season, becoming the 4th seed at the end of regular season and turning a very sketchy, vulnerable Knicks side into one of the best defensive teams in the league. Huge credit to the coaching staff, to Tom Thibodeau, everyone who was involved with the Knicks this season. And that leads me on to my second talking point. Talking point number 2, becoming a 4th seed team. Now, throughout the season, the Knicks had turned themselves into one of the best defensive teams in the league. And that is the sort of identity that the coaching staff and the front office have built on this season for the Knicks, because in the last few years there hasn't really been an identity for the New York Knicks. They've been just one of those teams with a fancy arena, one of the best arenas you can play in the NBA, and pretty much just easy wins because they just haven't been as good as they should have been. So coming into the season, it was important for the coaching staff to instill their own playing style and their own identity into this New York Knicks team. Well, there's been a lot of good games by Nerlens Noel, Taj Gibson as well. Unfortunately, Mitchell Robinson, our other center, has been injured, so he wasn't able to play as much this season, but stepping up with Nerlens Noel and Taj Gibson, Taj who's a veteran at this stage and played a lot of minutes this season. And that's been one of the huge positives for the season, is Tom Thibodeau bringing in those veterans and them helping the neophytes or the young players, the newish players, and helping them through this team, because the Knicks have a very half and half team, a very young side and a very old side. So it's good for those two groups to come together and share their skills and experience and helping the younger players play better for the future. And that's what we saw in the playoffs. We saw Emmanuel Quickley and Obi Toppin get a few highlight reels, getting them that experience for the playoffs, which was good to see, you know. And reaching the playoffs, it was very good experience for all these players. And that goes into one of my later talking points, which I will get to soon. Coming up to my 3rd talking point will be a huge reason of why the Knicks have been successful. Talking point number 3, one of the biggest reasons of why the Knicks have been so good this season, why they were able to claim that 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, and that is Julius Randle. Julius Randle was a huge part of why the Knicks were so good this season. He had a very improved season, hence why he won the most improved player of the league, with career highs in points and rebounds, with 24 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists. Now, averaging these numbers over the season is very impressive feat to accomplish. He recorded the most minutes in the Knicks side, so it goes to show you how much they relied on him, because he turned into an all-star for the Knicks this season. He was brought in last season after the Knicks missed out on a lot of potential good players with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, and let's just not get into that. And after signing Julius Randle, a lot of Knicks fans were very skeptical, thinking they would be getting a star. But little did they know they would be getting a player who would transform into one of the best power forwards in the league. He has been a leader for the Knicks team. He has been coaching his team into this grunty squad that can just grind out results in the league and work as hard as they can to become better players, because that's essentially what Julius Randle has been doing. He's been putting in the work. He's been training after games, before games, getting shots and extra shots in to just get himself to a level where we didn't think was possible. A lot of fans will be wondering if he will get that max contract after this season, because he was signed to a 3-year deal with a 1-year extension. So whether or not the Knicks will take him up on that max contract or just give him the 1-year extension, just so they're able to maybe sign someone else in the off season, potentially a second star to help him in that department, because the second player that the Knicks were his go-to was Barrett, who was a sophomore this season, who has improved hugely. He's still young, he's still raw, and the Knicks do need another star to help them out in that department, just to push them to that next level where we can make a decent run in the playoffs, which goes on to my fourth talking point in young players stepping up. And as part of those young players is second-year sophomore Barrett, who has been receiving a lot of criticism last season and this season as well, after he was the 3rd overall pick in the draft last year. And he didn't have this type of season that the 1st and 2nd pick had in Zion and Ja Morant, because I felt there was a lot of pressure on him coming to the New York Knicks as a bright spark in those dark days. And there was a lot of expectations on him to be that go-to player for the Knicks. And he had a pretty good first season. And I think with this Knicks squad, they wanted to build around RJ. And it's quite a lot to call on someone that young, because he is the youngest player in the New York Knicks roster, being 20 years old, even younger than some of the rookies that came in. A big thing with RJ has been the improvement this season after recording some very good numbers for the Knicks, showing a lot of people up. He got snubbed from the all-rookie team last year, which was very confusing, but he just took that as fuel to the fire, and he wanted to show the doubters that he can ball out, that he can be that number 2 player for the Knicks. And he's followed it up with a good sophomore season, recording 17.6 points, 5.8 rebounds with a 40% average from the 3-point line. Now that's not bad from someone who was roasted by the number 1 pick of this year's draft for being, for lack of better terms, not a good shooter. But I think he's good at stepping up to the challenge and proving his doubters that he is a serious baller, and he's going to be a very important player for the Knicks. And onto the next young player we look at is Immanuel Quickley. Now he was brought in as the 25th pick in the 2020 draft, straight in from Kentucky, shooting guard. As soon as he gets out on the court, he gets his chance, he balls out after averaging 19 minutes per game and 11.4 points. That's not bad for a rookie that gets minimal time on the court, but he makes the most of every chance he gets. And he's provided us with some brilliant highlights over the season with his deep threes, especially from the logo, and the floaters. Honestly, this guy will die before he actually does a normal layup. He will shoot that floater from wherever he wants to. This guy is definitely one for the future, and definitely a player that can be integrated into this Knicks team as a go-to shooter. And onto the next pick that the Knicks acquired in the 2020 draft was the 8th pick, and that is Obi Toppin. Now, there was a lot of expectation on Obi Toppin being the 8th pick, being so high up the draft for the Knicks, but he was also a power forward as well. A lot of people thought that the Knicks would go for Tyrese Halliburton, which would have been nice because he is a shooting guard, but he got picked up by the Kings in a later pick, and the Knicks opted for Obi Toppin, who is a power forward center, which was quite confusing because the Knicks had the power forward situation down packed with Julius Randle, and then the centers that they had, it just it was a bit confusing to see why they picked Obi Toppin. But it was just unfortunate to see the early season struggles he had because of the minimal minutes and being a Julius Randle understudy. But he started to come out of his shell at the later points of the season, and especially in the playoffs, giving a very good highlight in the playoffs with a dunk at MSG Stadium with everyone watching, with all the fans, with his parents watching. And I think the best is yet to come from this kid, because I feel like he needs more time to develop. Definitely keep your eye on Obi Toppin. Talking point number 5 is building off this season. It is important for the Knicks to build off the amazing season that they had, reaching the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, exceeding all expectations by everyone. No one even thought the Knicks would be in the playoffs, let alone be the 4th seed. But it's been a very, very good season. After maybe a disappointing playoff run, which, hats off to the Atlanta Hawks. They were very well coached. They had a very good team. They came prepared to New York. They knew exactly what points of the team to attack. They knew how to isolate Julius Randle and Barrett, hence why they had a few quiet games at the beginning. The Knicks are very close to making playoff runs, to testing these big teams that they've come up against, and all they need is, I believe all they need is just another star, preferably a shooting guard or like a small forward that can just be that go-to scorer who can also average in the 20s, which will be very, very helpful, because sometimes throughout the season when Julius Randle hasn't been so hot, we've had to rely on Barrett and the bench as well. And as good as they've been, it just hasn't been quite enough, and you notice that a lot in the playoffs this year. When Julius and RJ went firing, they'd have to rely on the bench, and they did a very good job, but you can just tell that it just wasn't enough. And that will be something to think about going into the off season, with the Knicks trying to find someone in free agency, having 4 picks in the new draft coming up, and over 50 million in cap space. That is a lot to work with, and they're going to need to do some serious planning for next season if they are to build off this season and reach those heights that a lot of Knicks fans can believe that they will get to. Because it's one thing to exceed all expectations with a good season, but to follow it up with an even better season would just mean the world to every Knicks fan. And those have been my 5 talking points for the New York Knicks season of 2020 to 2021. I guarantee you, coming into the next NBA season, that the Knicks will be getting back to unfinished business, and I will be hoping for another playoff push. Playoff qualification is a must for them next season, and I will expect nothing less than that. And hopefully they can get past the first round and take on the experience they've taken from the season, from the regular season, and in the postseason as well. Even though it was just 5 games, this is valuable experience that not only the older players can take, but also the new players. They know the expectation that comes with being in the playoffs. They know the level, they know how hard you need to work to get through to the next round. I guarantee you the Knicks will be back. And as always, if you made it through the end of the video, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.